right, day 14 of Japan has passed, and I just did something that I felt like I would never do again in my late 20s, and that is studying for a test or an exam for school. It's a strange feeling for sure, because it's a very familiar feeling, because majority of my life I've spent in school and studying for tests, doing homework and all that stuff, and I'm doing that stuff again. So it's definitely very interesting, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit. My experience with school has always been not school itself in terms of the classes and the tests and that element of it. It's never been that great for me. I had a hard time paying attention in class just because I found lectures super boring. And for tests and stuff, I would just read the textbook, self-study, and luckily I got good grades. But definitely for Japanese language school though, it's sort of different. I would expect it to be a different feel, but it's actually very similar. It's like you're learning material, new material, and the test is based around like the homework that you did, the textbook, and you're sort of studying in a way that helps you pass the exam instead of actually really learning the material. I think one of the things that I need to do way more is just speak with the material that I learned that's new. So just the whole, like one example is we learn the ta, or it's like from the te form, it goes into the past tense, which is like ta. So shite is an example of te with shimasu. So turn mas form into te form, which is shimasu to shite. And then there's also the ta form, which is shita. And then there's something that's another form that you use for listing things. So for instance, you can say, 昨日は奈良に行ったり、昼ご飯を食べたり、友達に会ったりしました。So that's just like listing 3 things that I did the previous day. And it's a form that I'm not used to. I'm not used to saying it, but I understand it in theory, and I can take a test and answer it correctly on a piece of paper. But for me, that's kind of pointless, because the whole idea of learning Japanese for me is to be able to speak it and understand it. Understanding it, if someone said it, I would be able to understand it. But speaking it, I feel like I'm so slow and that my brain hasn't quite truly absorbed the information to the point where it's like part of my vocabulary or part of my speaking set. It almost feels as if like the things I'm saying in Japanese are very much all of the things that I've known for a while. So in order to grow a larger vocabulary or just be able to speak more like the way a native speaker would speak, I'd have to really, really try hard to change the way I speak and how I say it. Because most of the time, I would just say something like, just using the same example as before, I would say something like, 昨日、奈良に行きました。そして昼ご飯を食べました。それから友達に会いました。Which is like the same thing, the same content, but it's all broken up and it's not as flowy as the tari form. So to me, going through this whole like school system and studying again for the exam, it felt very, very weird. And it felt like almost like unfortunate in a way. Like I felt like this doesn't really help too much. And why is it there? It felt pointless, I guess, is the way I would say it. But of course, I understand that the school needs a way to be able to tell if you're actually learning. And when each class has about 15, 16 or so students, then of course, you're gonna need a way to be able to test students in an efficient manner. So the school has come up with a system that it has. And do I think it's the best system? No, not really. I think that there could be definitely some changes to it and optimization. I would propose that they do tests where it's more so based around speaking and listening, and they do it in a way where they perhaps stagger the people for who to test. Like they take one person in at a time, different time slots, so it's still like, oh, you're still going through some lessons during the class, but you still get to test like the actual things that matter. And people will actually practice the things that they will use for learning Japanese. Because I guarantee you, most of the time, we're not going to need to write down like all these different things. And I thought it was interesting because when I was talking about this, not in as great detail, but with a friend who's also studying Japanese, I think she was saying how like, oh, so I was talking about systems and everything, and she was like, oh, you just want to break the system, that cliche or whatever. It's not really breaking any system. It's more so just about optimizing things, because systems are in place for a purpose, and it's not about like breaking them. It's more so just like trying to change them so that they're optimized, and not just like always staying the same because it works for the purpose of, say, like the school people, but it doesn't necessarily help with the purpose for the students, if that makes sense. So for me, I just personally do not really like exams in this way, like exams that are not necessarily testing you for what you want and incentivizing you to study in a way that doesn't help you with what you want. But to give more context, I am kind of a harsh critic when it comes to these things, since again, school wasn't exactly the best experience for me when it came to exams and class time and all that stuff. I will say though, for Japanese language school so far, class time has been really good. The teachers are very energetic, the teachers are amazing, and the way that they deliver the lessons, I definitely am paying attention, and I'm definitely engaged in class this time around. So I very much like the class itself and the lessons that we're learning. It's just that having to study for an exam again just triggered a lot of these thoughts, and I wanted to share them. I'll also say that I tried to study with some friends that are in a different level, and it didn't quite work. I think next time I will for sure try to form a study group with people in the same class, or at least in the same level, and maybe we can make it a fun experience rather than a boring one, because for me it was quite boring. I just reviewed mostly the homework and that's it. And the test itself was not that hard, so at the end of the day, it was just me making it a bigger thing than it needed to be. But it is a reminder that I should be trying to review the material in the way that I think will help me the most. So speaking it out loud and internalizing it and adding it to my toolbox of things I can actually say in a real conversation. So that'll be the next time I actually really study for it, an exam. I won't actually study for the exam, ironically. I'll study in the way I think will best serve me. And I think that's the moral of the story.